Katana Zero is many things. It's a fast and fluid bullet time platformer. It's a game with gorgeously animated sprite art and a presentation that brims with aesthetic personality. It's a dystopian post-war story about an amnesiac assassin with weird time powers. It's got cutscenes with a nifty dialogue system where you can cut off who you're talking to during pretty much any conversation. It's an exciting thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat for the whole ride. There's a lot that's worth discussing about this wonderful gem that released earlier this year, but what I'd like to talk about specifically is the twist Katana Zero pulls at the end. Throughout the game, Zero recounts a nightmare of himself as a boy, being attacked by a shadowy figure in a hut. Over time, the nightmare becomes clearer and clearer, revealing that the shadowy figure didn't actually attack him, that it instead entered the place to disable a computer, and finally that the figure itself was a war soldier, similar to the one he fights for the game's final boss. Just before credits roll, it's revealed that the soldier in his nightmare was actually him, and that it's really a memory of when he was a soldier during the war. It's a rather cliché twist, and it's likely that many saw it coming, but it's a good conclusion to Katana Zero nonetheless. And the thing that interests me about it is how the game attempts to strengthen the twist's setup in a way that players might not have even realized. Within the story, Zero believes that the boy in his nightmare is him, referring to the boy as himself as a kid when recalling it to a psychiatrist. On top of that, the kid looks convincingly like how Zero could have looked as a child, having similarly colored black hair. While playing, you might have developed the preconception yourself that it's Kid Zero before Zero even describes the nightmare, because they look so similar. These are the efforts the game takes to set up the twist in the story's beginning, but there's one other thing Katana Zero does to have the player make the connection and believe the boy is Zero as a child. In the very first nightmare sequence, you are given control of the boy. You have to press the A button to initiate playing catch with another shadowy figure. It's a simple little sequence that only requires pressing a button, but the purpose is to let the player have agency over this character. The player now associates control and significance with this boy simply because they influenced him tossing a ball a couple times. Since the nightmare scene occurs very early in the game, where you've only played as one individual character, Zero, for such a short time, combined with the game establishing that Zero believes the boy is himself as a child, the player is more convinced of this as fact. The game tells you to subconsciously think the boy is Zero in the beginning by giving you control of only the two of them. And as you play further and further into the game, where you've only played as Zero for more and more of it, you begin to accept that Zero is the only playable character of the story. You become convinced the boy is the same person since you've played as Zero for virtually 100% of the time. The setup is further enforced through gameplay without the player even thinking about it. But it doesn't just stop there. Katana Zero also uses gameplay to break down the very same twist, but again in a way the player doesn't catch on to. Now, I might be giving the devs too much credit with this example, but the first nightmare is the only time you have control of the boy. Every other nightmare sequence after that is just a cutscene. I'd like to think there's a purpose to this. Something along the lines of the lack of playing as the kid after the first time conveys that Zero internally begins to realize the boy isn't really him. But it could just be that the ball toss gameplay was only deemed necessary for the first nightmare to get the point across, without the devs considering what not having it in later nightmares could represent. This second point, however, definitely seems like an intended counter to the ball tossing playing a part in the twist's setup. The reason the player makes the connection that Zero and the boy are the same person, other than it being established in the story, is that you only have control over these two characters for a majority of the game. You start to see Katana Zero as a game about Zero, where you only play as Zero, and therefore the boy would also have to be Zero as a kid, right? But you don't only play as Zero. Making an almost invasive entrance, the man who really holds the title that Zero thought the media gave to him, the Dragon, appears. The dragon, also known as 15, is another player in what was thought to be just Zero's adventure. Later after his introduction, Zero gets the security tapes of 15 invading the prison to interrogate Fa Yen, which then becomes a whole level where you play as him infiltrating the prison, complete with a unique time mechanic specific to him. Katana Zero is no longer just Zero's story at this point. You get control of another perspective, of another character. Your subconscious assumption that Katana Zero is only about Zero breaks when you reach the level that's entirely dedicated to somebody else. The belief that the boy is Zero becomes challenged now as the game proves that you do play as more characters than just Zero. But since Zero and the boy was a connection made so early in the game, you probably aren't thinking about it while you play as 15. So this level gives a discreet hint of the truth, but the ball tossing is also discreet in a similar way. You're not going to start questioning whether the kid really is Zero the second you're given control of 15, but it is something the game tries to tell you by giving control of him. And there you have it. The game's concluding twist is built up and broken down to the player by using more than just the narrative, without them really being aware of it. Having control of the boy is an incredibly neat detail, being such a small little gameplay sequence that you've probably forgotten about by the end of Katana Zero, but it can enforce to you in the moment that they might be the same character. Katana Zero touches into an incredible thing that video games are capable of as a medium, and while there's so much more to this game that makes it something truly special, this little detail still deserves to be noticed. But hey, that's just my perspective.